Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Darkfold tutorial. So today we're going to be doing another digital matte painting, as you can see in the example here. So as always, we need to make sure that we're in Cycles Render, and also that the video resolution is the same as the movie clip that you're using. And finally, make sure that this is at 100%. By default it's set to 50%, so go ahead and increase that to 100. If we don't, when we go to render, we'll have some trouble with the masks. So now we can go down here and change this window from the 3D view to the movie clip editor. Now you can go ahead and open up your background movie clip. So this movie clip that I'm using, I'll make sure to throw a link in the description if you want to use it too. Same thing with all the other assets that I use, I'll be sure to throw links in the description. Okay, so this is the clip that I'm using. So the next thing we can do is set the timeline to be the length of the movie clip. So we can go over here to set scene frames. Now this is far too big for me, but if you wanted to use the full clip, go ahead and use that. I'm just going to go ahead and set this back to 250. And then we need to go ahead and prefetch the clip. So this purple bar will fill up all the way. If it doesn't fill up all the way, you just need to go to File, then down to User Preferences, over to System, I think, and then go scroll down, and there's a memory cache limit, just increase that. So now I have this, and we can scrub through, and it looks okay. You might not be able to notice, but it actually moves. We just jump back to the first frame and then zoom in. If we focus on this little rock here and play through the footage, we can see that yeah, the camera moves a little bit, so we don't track in the assets. They will just stay on screen, they won't move with the background. So we need to make sure we add a couple of tracking markers which will help keep everything in place. Let's jump back to the first frame. So these settings are going to be pretty much the same as we always use. I'm going to go down to Match, change this to Previous Frame, check Normalize. Down here to Marker Display, you want to check Search Size as well, so we can see where it's searching. So as I mentioned, I'm going to add some elements into the shot. I want to add maybe a horse and a rider down here, a tower up here, and some off in the background, along with maybe some birds and a boat and a few other little things just to make it look more lively. But for these to happen, for these to work, we need to add some tracking markers, as I mentioned. So I know the horse rider is going to be down here, so I need to add a tracking marker. Up here is a pretty good spot to track, so I'm going to use this spot up here. I want to hold Control and then left click. As you can see, it's added this preview over here. It's this area here, this pattern, which Blender's going to search for. And then on the outside, this is the area where it's going to search for this pattern. So if we increase this, it's going to help with footage that's blurry or fast. Take a little bit longer to track since this square is quite so big. So if you don't need to have it so big, just reduce it down. So let's scroll down here to the tracking section. I'm just going to track forward. Since we're at the first frame, we need to track forward. Now that's done a good job, but if it didn't, let's say it did this, after a few frames it just turned to this color here, that means it lost the track. So you jump back to the first frame. So if you can see this yellow bar here under the purple one which has been added, that represents the tracking marker. So if we clear the tracks, we can see it gets rid of it, and now it won't move. And then what I would do, I'd press S to scale to increase the pattern size. And then you could also increase this or decrease this, depends if you need to or not. But I'll just show you if it's dead big. Look how it goes a bit slower, depending on how many frames you're going to track for as well. Could be a bit of a pain. So I'm just going to go back down. Since it worked well at quite a small size, I'm just going to retrack this. So this is going to be one of our tracking markers, and we're going to have a couple of them. So it'd be nice to know which is which. So up here where it says track, we can rename this. I'm just going to name this island, and since there's two islands, I'm going to add near. And then let's go over to this one and track this one. So again, Control left click. This should be a good point to track. Now if we try and track this forward, it won't work since we're at the end frame. So in this example, we're just going to track backwards. Let's play through and make sure that this stays in position. We can see that it does a good job. And let's rename this. Okay, so now we have these. The last thing I guess we could do is add a mask. Like as I mentioned, we're going to add a building over here. So we're going to add a mask just to integrate this into this area a little bit better. So let's go down here to the tracking mode and change this to the masking mode. or you could press tab just to switch between them. Then I'm going to click new to add a new mask, and I'm going to rename this. Since again we're going to have a couple of masks, we need to know which one is which. So now we have this. Again, masking is very simple. You just control left click. If you hold control and just keep left clicking, you can do it pretty quickly. And I'm going to kind of make a nice or an interesting shape. Now this rock sits in front of this rock, so we need to again mask around it. Right now I'm just going to go for it fairly quickly, and then I'm going to take a little bit of time to refine it, but for now I just want to get the basic shape. So now I just want to close off this mask, and normally what I'd do is I'll close it off this way. I'd go around and just say this is the area that we want the effect to show, but in this example I'm going to go this way, which is the wrong way in this example, but then I'm going to show you how to fix that, because some people have asked, you know, what to do when your mask has been messed up, so hopefully this will help answer that question. I'm just going to press Alt-C to close this mask, like so. Now we have this. So what we need to do is make sure that this marker is selected. We know it's selected since it's white, whereas this marker over here is grayed out. If we right click, we could select this one. We want to parent this mask to this tracking marker, so again make sure this one's selected, then we can press A to highlight this mask here. Then I'm going to hold Control and press P. Now we've parented this mask to this tracking marker. Again, if we play through, looks good. So now we have this, let's go ahead and start compositing the shot. So let's change this from the movie clip editor to the node editor. Now let's go down here, change this to the scene tab, and then check use nodes, just for these nodes to show up. Then also we want to make sure we check backdrop, so we can add a viewer node and see what we're doing. So now we have this render layers, we don't need it, so select this one, press X, Shift A, input movie clip, then just connect this up to the composite node. Then go down here, we can click this icon and just select the movie clip that we've been working with. Now we need to add a viewer node, so Shift A, go to output, and then we can just click and add a viewer node and connect that up. Or if you're lazy like me, you can just hold Control, Shift and left click on any node to preview it. And again, this will only work if you've got the Node Wrangler add-on, so definitely go and check that out and start using that. So I did a quick tutorial on the Node Wrangler. If you want to go check it out, there's a link up here. So now we have this, let's go and zoom out a little bit, like so. Make a bit of space, since for this example there's going to be quite a bit of nodes. It's going to be nodes heavy, so if you've not used nodes or you're not comfortable with using nodes, previous digital map painting tutorial, probably do Skyfort or one of the other ones I've done, but that's a lot easier to do. There's less nodes, whereas this is a little bit more complicated, but I'll try and explain it as best as I can. So I'll also take some screenshots of the nodes and upload those to Facebook if you want to check them out. Again, I'll throw a link in the description. But before we do anything else, I want to take a quick render of this. Just press render. So now we need to save this out. I'm going to press F3. Or what you can do, if you go down here where it says image, just go to save as image. And then I'm going to save this in our project folder, so I know where it is later on. Let's go down to my project folder, try and find it. So this is going to be my reference. This is my reference image. Save that. So later on, I'm going to open up photo editing software and then just add some images and use this as a reference to where I want to place the images. I'll show you how I did that. But we just needed this image before we start adding things to it, just so it doesn't get in our way. So now I can press escape. Now we've got that image. Shift A, I'm going to go to color. And normally I use a mix node to mix things together, but for this example, we're going to use an alpha over. Most examples you can use a mix, but in some occasions like this, having an alpha over will work better. So I'm just going to drop this onto the bottom string here, which is that composite node. And then again, using the lazy connect, I'm going to hold Control, Shift, left click, just to preview this. So for this, I'm going to add another movie clip on top of this. So let's go ahead and duplicate this movie clip node, Shift D. I'm going to drop this here for now. And then let's click this folder icon and replace this. Then let's plug this in. Now straight away we can see there's a problem. This movie clip is smaller than this one. We can fix that with just one node, so Shift A, Distort, Scale. I'm just going to drop this in. I'm going to change this to render size. So now I have this. Let's close this down. We don't need to worry about it. Now another problem you can see is it's black. It's a black screen, and as we play through, it just fades from black, which is not good for this example. So if we find a frame, let's say frame 30 looks good. So I want to start from here. Now what I could do, I could just change the start frame to say 30, but then we'd be losing the first 30 frames of this movie clip, which I don't want to do. I want to keep all frames. So let's change this back to 1. And what I can do, I'll just preview this again, so connect this up to the viewer node. So later on we'll just change this and start from a clean frame. So don't worry about this for now. Let's just remember that frame 30 is a good frame to start from for this movie clip. So now we want to cut this horse out and use it in our background image. So a way we can do that is by adding a custom mask, and then we're going to add another node to help it out. So again, let's change this window back to the movie clip editor. So let's go down here where we can see this movie clip icon. Click this. We've already loaded in the second movie clip, which is this Pexels video. Again, I'll throw a link in the description if you want to use this one too. We need to prefetch this, but since we're in the masking mode, we don't have the option here. So let's change this back to the tracking mode. And let's jump to the first frame. I don't know why, but if you start prefetching from, say, the middle, it takes a lot longer, and sometimes it comes up with a loading error. It's weird. So just always make sure you jump to the first frame. It might just be for me, but jump to the first frame, click prefetch, and it just fills up fairly quickly. And then we can go back to 30 because that's where we want to be starting it from. Now for this, again, we're going to need to add a tracking marker. So for some reason these tracking settings have reset. So let's go back and change these again. Change this to previous frame. Enable normalize. Now search size has stayed, so we don't need to enable that again. Control left click. I'm going to put this around here. Should be good. And then go ahead and track again. So same thing as we did before. We want to make sure that this stays. It's not perfect. We can see that it gets blurry and it looks a bit messed up. But I've tried this before, and the rider sticks to it pretty well. It looks pretty good, and that will work for us. So now let's go over here to the tracker and let's rename this. So we're naming all these because it becomes important later on, so it's best practice to name these now. So let's go ahead and create a mask. Change back over to the masking mode. Now we don't want to change this mask here. This is our island building mask. So let's go ahead and create a new one by clicking this plus button here. Let's go ahead and rename this. Now I'm just going to press T, N. Let's get rid of those. So now I want to create this mask, and I want to get as close to this edge as I can. But then when it comes to around here, I'm not going to be too accurate because we're going to use the node to clean everything else up. So hopefully it makes sense in a minute. Let's first go ahead and create this mask. So again, I'm going to do this fairly quickly just to get the block shape in, and then I'm going to come back and refine it. So I'm going to hold Control and just left click pretty quickly. Again, just refine that. And don't worry how it's not too accurate for now. I will come back and refine this. When it gets to the tail actually moves, so we don't want to get too close, otherwise it'll start cutting the tail off. So I'm just going to go like this. Same thing for the head moves quite a bit, so we don't want to get too close to it, otherwise let's say the head moves up, the ear gets cut off or something like that. So the neck we can get pretty close to. And then again, hold Alt, press C just to close it. Now we have this. Make sure this tracking mark is selected by right clicking. Then press A to select all of these. Hold Control, press P. Now it's parented. Now let's go ahead and refine it. So I'm going to press A to select all of them. Then I'm going to press V. And then I'm going to choose automatic. Now, a lot of these will work pretty well. Some of them might not work out too good, so you need to go back and check that it looks okay. So once you've refined it, you want to play through and make sure the horse doesn't go outside of the mask. Like this here is not too much of a big deal that you can get away with, but if it's any more than that, you might want to just increase it a little bit, just so it doesn't cut things off. Same thing with over here, but that's pretty good, that'll work. Now we need to fix this issue here, so let's change this from the movie clip editor to the node editor. So now we plug that in here. Let's jump back to frame 30. And then let's go ahead and Shift A, input, mask. Click the mask icon. I'm going to change this to the horse mask. Plug this into the factor. And we have this. Now we just need to get rid of this bottom part here, which is pretty simple. Shift A, go down to matte. And I'm going to use, for this one, I'm going to use a chroma key. I mean, you can use quite a few of these, will work. But for this one, I'm going to use a chroma key. I'm going to just drop this in after the scale. Now with this, I'm going to increase the acceptance all the way up to 80%. And then same thing for the cutoff, I'm going to increase all the way up to 30%. And so let's try a green color. Doesn't seem to do anything. If we plug this into the viewer node, we might be able to see things clearer. Plug this in. Now we can see it's affecting some things up here, but not what we need it to. But if you notice, it's more of a yellow color this, so let's go into the yellows. Much better. Now again, we don't need to worry about the greens up here since we've added the mask. That's going to get rid of all these up here. But what you could do if you didn't want to add the mask, you could probably just add another chroma key, change the color to a darker color, and get rid of that too. But for this one here, we're focusing on this bottom section here, especially around the head and the legs. So now we've got a color that looks okay. Let's start dragging down the fall off, and as we do this, we should get rid of all the ones around it, like so. Make sure you don't take away too much detail from the horse as well. Now we've got this, again, don't worry about the colors up here. We want to try and refine these edges, and the way we can do that, if we click this color here and start drag it around a little bit and see if we can get a little bit of a nicer color, nicer edge around things. Doesn't look too bad. Now if we go back to the alpha over node, plug this back in, we get this. It looks strange, and that's because we need to do one more thing, convert pre-multiply. Click that, and there we go. But it looks pretty good. If you need to refine it, go back to the mask, and you can refine it, add another mask and refine it if you need to. Again, we've done tutorials on masking if you want to check that out. If you need help with masking, that will probably help you there. Now the last thing we could do for this horse before we start moving things around and adding things is fixing the black colour from the frame 0. So if we jump back to the first frame, we can see it does this, which is horrible. There's a really easy way to fix that, and I could have done it from the beginning, but I wanted to show you, the problems that you might face with a clip like this, because when you're using assets, you'd normally get rid of all these problems first and then just bring them in when they're ready to use. It saves you a lot of time, and yeah, you can reuse assets without needing to fix them every time. So definitely fix your assets, render them out, and then bring them back in instead of doing what we're doing now. It takes less time. I just wanted to show you that it's still possible. Anyway, so Shift A, let's go to Input, Image Sequence. Now you're thinking, an image sequence, it's a movie clip. That's okay, we can still use the node. I'll go back and find the movie clip, which is that horse one here. Now it says import as image sequence, and we don't see anything. That's because it's hiding. See our mouse over here? If we start dragging it over to the left, we can see it appears. Left click, and we can just position it. So now we have this, and there's a few things we need to do for it to work. First of all, we need to change this back from an image sequence to a movie clip. And now we can change this. For the frames, it's asking how many frames are in the movie clip. Now, let's say 250. Now it's working. It's going to start on our frame 1 on the timeline, but it's been offset by a crazy amount. So let's set that back to 0. And now we have the exact same thing. These nodes are the same, except we have these options here, which, by the way, it would be nice if we could click one button just to have the options here pop up. But again, we just add this image sequence node and it'll work. Let's go back to frame 30 and we'll see there is no difference. They both do exactly the same thing. fade in from black. But if we go down here to where it says offset, if we change this to a set number of frames, and now we know frame 30 is good. Now from the beginning, it's going to start off, it's not going to have this fade in. Let's just change this here, delete this one. As you can see, as we play through, now we have a clean clip, and now it's ready to be used. Let's go ahead and add in our horse rider. This is going to be an image, which will be then tracked, so it follows the horse. And then we're going to scale them both down and put them into maybe over here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and add in the horse rider, jump back to the first frame. So what we can do, we can select this alpha over node here, press Shift D to duplicate it, drop it onto the bottom, connect this up to the viewer node. I'm going to make some space because we're going to have a crazy amount of nodes. So I'm going to make some space, press B, box select these two and just drag these over and move this over here. So we could also probably close down some of these. So as I mentioned, it's going to be an image, so Shift A, input image, go to open. So I found this image off I think Pixabay, and again there'll be a link in the description. I just cut this out from the background and added grains. So now we have these two, we want to fit them together. When you're composing an image like this, you need to be wary of the direction of the light. As you can see in the background image, the light's coming from this direction. You can see there's the light's hitting these rocks here and some shadows. Whereas on this rider, the light's hitting his back. Same thing with the horse, the light's hitting here. So I looked through the images, I kept that in mind as well, from which direction the light's coming from. If you need to change it, you can always go into Photoshop and just darken this and then brighten it if you need to, just to fit your needs. So let's go ahead and put this rider into position, Shift A, go down to distort and flip, drop this on here. Now we flip direction again. As you can see, the sun looks like it's hitting on the back, same with the horse. Close this down, we don't need it. Shift A, distort, transform. Then I'm going to try and position him over here. So I'm going to scale it down a little bit. Now the scale for this, the bigger you have the person, or I guess the bigger the horse, the more imposing the horse looks, or the smaller the horse and the bigger the person, the more imposing the person looks. So it depends what kind of emphasis you want to put on the person or the horse. I think that's not too bad. And again, you can always come back later on and change it if you need to. Close this down as well. We no longer need to change this. The extra nodes just to position him, and then once we're happy with everything, we're going to position both of them. So I'm going to add some more nodes, and then we're going to add some more nodes. It's just a crazy amount of nodes to keep everything working. So hopefully I explain things as the way. If I don't explain anything or I'm going too fast, be sure to ask some questions in the comments or go to our Facebook group and I'll try and answer them, try and be clearer. So I apologize if I'm going too fast anyway. I know people have said that I go too fast, so I'll try and slow it down. So now we've got this, let's see what happens when we play through. We can see it's obviously slowing down, but the horse moves, yet the rider stays in the same position. Now, we can fix that, pretty simple. After this transform, which is just putting him on top of the horse, we now need to add another node. We'll move him in speed or in pace with the horse. So Shift A, go to translate, just drop this on here. So now we need to animate the X value, but we can use a node to do that for us. Shift A, go to input, then track position, just drop this down here. Then we can click this movie icon here. We have two videos to choose from, the rocks, which is the background, and the pixels video, which is the horse. Now if we remember, we added a tracking marker for the horse, so we want to use this one. This is always going to be camera, and then this is going to ask us for the tracking marker, and we can see it's the horse track. And then once we connect this up, it'll do this. So we need to go down to where it says position here and just change this from absolute to relative start. There we go. So now as we play through this, the horse rider will move with the horse, which is good, it's what we want. So again, it's quite a few nodes just to get this to work, but I don't think it would work in Photoshop, since we're having an image sat on top of a movie clip, which is also sat on top of a movie clip, which is then moving, and also we need to move it in because the camera's moving as well. So there's quite a few things working. So I think Blender does a pretty good job. There's just a little bit of a workaround, and maybe it could be a little bit easier, but it's not too bad. It just takes a little bit of time. So now we can close this down as well. We don't need to see that. The same thing for this one. So we're not going to be changing these nodes again once we've set these. That's why I've just closed these down so we don't accidentally change them. Now we have this, the horse moves, the man moves with a horse. Now we need to put them both in position. So let's try and tidy things up here. I'm going to move this down here. Just grab these. So right now it's not too crazy. We have the background movie clip, we have the horse movie clip, and we have the horse rider image. So we have the mask for the horse. So now we need to position these. So Shift A, go to Distort, Transform. So we need to transform the horse rider. Shift D, we also need to transform the horse. So now when we move this on the X, we're going to need to do the same thing for the horse. So we'd need the same value here. One of the problems is you can see the horse gets cut off, and that's because the mask here, the horse mask that we created, this also needs to move as well. So let's go back to this transform node, Shift D, duplicate it, and place it on here. So we've done something like this in previous tutorials where the mask and the image needs to move at the same time. This time we're just adding the horse rider since he needs to be in the same spot as well. So I think this is the first time we've used 3 transform nodes at the same time. Normally it's just 2 or 1. We need to control all of these at the same time. And if you followed along in previous tutorials, you know what's coming next. We just need to Shift A, go to Input, down to Value node, and then let's connect this up to the X on all 3 of these. Then I'll select this, Shift D, plug this into the Y. Shift D, just change this back to 1, since scale always has a default value of 1. Plug this into the scale. So now we have this. Again, you can do the same thing for the angle, but we don't really need to right now. So now we have these 3 nodes. What we can do, if we select all of them, and then press Ctrl J, we can just create a frame. And this is going to be our control. Again, now it starts to get a little bit messy, but if you follow along, you know where everything is, and hopefully it's not too crazy right now. So now let's position this horse rider over here. So I'm going to hold Shift and drag this down, and then position this. So I might come back a little bit later on and just refine all this, but for now that position is good. We do need to color correct the horse and the man just so it fits the shot better, but for right now I'm just going to leave it as it is and just move on and add the other elements. So when we play through this, there's one more thing we need to do to make it fit in the scene. We can see that the camera moves and this sort of terrain goes up, but the horse stays in the same position. Now it should also move with the camera, so we need to sort of replicate that as well. It'll be a little bit confusing with all these nodes, but I just need to add a couple more nodes here. So Shift A, go to Distort, then let's go to Translate. Drop this in here right after this transform node. Shift D again for this one, Shift D for this one, because we want to keep all of these moving. Because we want to keep all of these in the correct position. Shift A, go to Input, Track Position, like we did with the horse, but this time we're going to use the different. But this time we're going to use a few different settings. So click the movie icon. We're going to click the rocks because we want the horse and the rider to move with the background of the rocks. Click camera. Then for the tracker, we've got 2 trackers. We can see that the horse rider and the horse will be for this tracking marker. And if you remember, we named them, so it's the island near. And then what you need to do is connect the X and the Y for all of these. Just for these 3 nodes that we added. It's disappeared again, so let's go to the position, change it to a relative start, So now when we play through, everything works as it should. Crazy amount of nodes. Now we can tidy these up by putting them into frames if we want to. So let's go ahead and create a frame for all these since they don't need to be changed. I'm going to select all of these here, Control J, and let's go ahead and name it. This can be tracking in position, I guess, is what it is. So now we know all these are for tracking in position. This is the rider, this is the horse, and this is the background. And this is the horse mask. So hopefully that's a little tidier for you. So the next thing I'm going to do is add an image into the background. As I mentioned before, we're going to open photo editing software and use that for most of the details. I just want to add this in just so I have more greater separation, and I can add some distance pretty easy. But again, you can do it all in photo editing, just save out 2 images. So again, I'm going to select this alpha over, Shift D, connect this up to the viewer node, Shift A, go to image, so again I just cut out this image from its background, and again we need to note the direction of the light. It's coming from this direction. We can see the shadows are on this side and the lighting's on this side, so we need to flip this. Shift A, go down to distort, flip, let's drop this in here. Now we can close this down since we don't need to see it. And again, we're going to position it. So distort, transform. And then you want to try and position this. And again, I'm going to come back and refine this. But so once you've got it in position, we need to set it in the background. If you remember before, we added a mask. So Shift A, input, mask. I'm going to drop this up here. Select the mask icon and change this to the island building far mask. Plug this into the factor and we get this. As I mentioned before, I would normally go around this way for the mask, but I actually went around this way just to show you what would happen. Simple way you can fix that, if we go Shift A, go to color and just add in an invert node right here. It just inverts the mask and it gives us what we want. So now we have this. I would also want to color correct it. Shift A, go to color. I'm going to add a hue saturation value for this one. And then if we notice it's in the blue colors, so now I'm just going to increase the hue. Give this an orangey kind of look. It's pretty good. Reduce saturation. And maybe increase the value. It's not too bad. I also, later on, I'm going to add some fake atmosphere, some mist, just to fade this off into the distance even further. So I would also have to add an RGB curves here and just increase the distance or the white colors. Again, we've done that in the previous tutorial, so you probably already know how to do that. Now we've done that, we also need to make sure it moves with the background. If we play this will stay in the same position, whereas the background will move. So again, every time we add something, whether it's a movie clip or an image, we always need to transform it into the position where we want it to be. But then we also have to go down to distort, translate, add in this translate node, Shift A, track position, and the image follows the position. So it's the same thing we did before, and it's the same thing we're probably always going to have to do to make this work. Change this to the rocks, change this to camera. Now this one, before we used island near, but because this is sat in the distance, I'm going to use island far, and then change this to relative start. Anyway, so now we have these, that's all going to move. So I want to add some more images. So instead of doing this for the rest of the images, I'm just going to open up a photo editing software. So you can use whatever software you want. I'm going to use GIMP. And again, that's why we rendered that still image before, just to use as a reference. Load up that image that we took the first time, that still image. Again, this is going to be used as a reference. We're not going to be saving this image at the end. We're just going to use it to position the items. So the first thing I did was add in these runes here on the left. And this is actually 2 images, which is then being color graded. I'll just show you the images that I used. This is the first one. I just cut this out from the background. And I also did the same thing for this, cut this out, then combine them both together and color graded them both. And you see I added some white shine here to the edges just to kind of match the rocks. But this is what it will look like. That's all it is. The next one was added a tower. This is kind of a lighthouse tower, which I thought looked pretty good. This started off like this, or again, put this out and then color graded it so it looks like this. What I also did, if you can see this black line here, this is a shadow. I added this and also added a shadow here, like a contact shadow. I added this because we add some trees as well, which I'll show you in a minute. But obviously since the tree's right next to it, it would also have a heavy shadow. I also added some highlights to try and match this as well. Then I added a shadow for the tower, since this would need a shadow. It looks odd without one. And then that tree that I mentioned, I added this. Again, I added a shadow to the tree, but since this is almost touching, it'd be quite dark. And then for this one, I just added a tree on the front. So I'll show you what it started off as. It started off like this. In fact, if I bring it over, you can see how different it is. So what I did is just added a bit more dimension to it and added some highlights to it just to kind of complement or match the shot. So I think it looks better and it kind of matches the scene more than it did. Same thing with all of these assets. You do need to put some work in to try and match the shot. You can't just start off with a flat image like this and hope it works. You do need to put a little bit of emphasis on maybe the dimensions or the highlights of the colors, kind of note what's around it. The next thing I did was add a shadow for this tree, since again it looks odd without having one. So I thought next thing I did was add another bush, kind of shadow on it as well, just to kind of match the drop shadow. And the last thing I did was add some more shrubs. Again, they've got shadows on them to try and match as if they're sat in the scene. I'm pretty happy with that overall. It's not too bad. Again, you can spend more time and effort into making it look even better, but I think that looks pretty good. So I'll just mute this now. So this is all we need. We just go to File, Export As, and I'm going to export this and make sure you save it as a PNG, otherwise you won't get that transparency. Go ahead and export. So I've already exported this out, I don't need to do it again. Go back to Blender, and now same thing we did with this one here, we're going to do the exact same thing. So we could actually copy the nodes. Let's select this image here, alpha over node, Shift D, and then let's drop this on here, connect this up, select the folder icon, go ahead and open it up, connect this up, and we also need this translate node here and this one here. Remember, this is the track position, so let's select both of these, Shift D, and then let's just connect this up, replace this one. So now these images will move with the background. So it's the same thing as this really. There's a few more things I want to add. Maybe add some birds over here. Same technique as I did in the previous tutorial, so if you follow along in that, you already know how to do it. It's the same thing as what we did here with the horse kind of. And then we add one of the matte nodes just to get rid of most of the color. And then we add box masks just to refine that mask even more. So it's pretty much the same thing as we did with a horse. I'm going to do that with the birds over here, add some birds. And then also maybe add a boat in the distance. It's the same thing, just add a boat with a mask. Again, I'm going to make sure I add these translate node and track position just to keep them all moving properly. And add a few final touches and then call it done. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to speed through this and come back with the final result. I'll show you the nodes. I'll take screenshots of all these nodes if you want to check them out. So there's quite a few nodes now. I mean, there's a crazy amount than there was before, but I'll kind of break it down for you. This is what we had before almost. Let's fix that grading for this. So kind of this is what it was before. And then what I did is, if you can see, we go down here, I added in a few things. So for the background image here, it went all the way over here. So in between the background image, what I did was I just added another mix node, the movie clip. Movie clip was then transformed into a position. So I can show you how it looks. I'll mute this. So I added the mix node, then I added the movie clip, then I added this transform node just to put it in position. Then I added the translate and the track position node just so it moves along with the footage. I also animated this so it starts off behind the behind here, and then by the end it's over here. And again, we've done this in previous tutorial before as well. Then what I did, I wanted to add some distance or some atmosphere. So I went back to the movie clip editor, and then I created a new mask, which is called Mist. And what I did, I just traced around this rock here, same thing we did before, traced around all here and here. And then I parented this mask, this far tracker here, so it moves along. So we go back to the node editor. So again, right after the boat, I just added an RGB curves, and then I plugged the mask, this mist mask, into the factor. So I've got to unmute this now. And then what I did is I just dragged this point up just a little bit, so we get some distance here. Now obviously this building stands back out, so this building is on top of this effect here. So let's go back to the building, which is over here. And then I added an RGB curves, and then again just increase this point up here. Press M to unmute it, just to kind of match the distance or the mist. Looks pretty good. And I color corrected the horse and the person. Let's see. I mean, it's not much difference, but you can see it's quite bright. His armor there is quite bright, so I just decreased this a little bit. So I added an RGB curves and just dragged it down a little. Just makes him darker. And then for the horse, I did the kind of same thing with the horse, kind of made it darker here and made it a little bit lighter there. So let's just unmute this and see. So it gives it a bit of darkness and kind of fits it in there more. Again, the majority of nodes are the movie clip, bit of color correction, and then transforming it. That's all it is just that's the same sort of setup. Here with the birds, I added some birds here. If we just unmute this. So it's again, same thing as we did in a previous tutorial where we added this distance key, added a couple of box masks, and then transformed it. Now we have these birds down here, which looks pretty good. I decided to add that image that we created towards the end, and no specific reason, just repositioned it. So then we have this, and again I didn't color grade it, I just tracked the position, and that's all it needs. Looks pretty good. And then finally what I did is this kind of bloom effect, or this sunbeams. I added a sunbeams node, and then a mix node, but then changed it to screen, and then later on I added an RGB curves just to make it more contrasty. But if I just unmute these now, it's going to take a little bit longer, but if I unmute this and show you the difference, I mean, it looks okay as it is, but I wanted more of a bright kind of hazy scene. I think that kind of does when it catches up. Might take a little bit of time to load. That looks pretty good. It's kind of fits the thing that I imagined when I wanted to create this, so I'm pretty happy with it overall. Once you are happy with it, again, you can add some more color grading. I didn't really color grade it since the shot was already color graded and it looked okay. But if you want to make it more dramatic, or change it completely, go ahead and do that. Once you're happy with it and you want to go ahead and render it out, go over here, go down to input. So we've set where we want to save this to. Let's go down. Let's change this from a JPEG. Either render it out as a video file or as an image sequence. It's entirely up to you. I'm going to render this out as a movie clip. And then finally we need to go to encoding. Change the presets. I'm going to choose H.264 in MP4 format, which seems to work for me, works for Facebook and YouTube and everywhere else I seem to upload it. So that works well. And now we've got this, we can go ahead and hit animation. If you create something and you want to share it with us, be sure to check out our Facebook group. Go ahead and post it, or ask questions if you're stuck, or just join it and see what's going on. It's entirely up to you. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, be sure to give it a like. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.